D. McClung, Archer Monologues. This is January the 17th, 2022 already. All right, just got a couple items here. Let's run through it. I'm going to let you listen for yourself. Here we go.
Kamala Harris noting that laws have already been passed in 19 states, making it harder to vote.
And the proponents of these laws are not only putting in place obstacles to the ballot box, they are also working to interfere with our elections, to get the outcomes they want, and to discredit those they do not.
Did you get that? Did you get that? All right, here's another one.
We have over 100,000 children, which we have never had before, in serious condition, and many on ventilators. At the time Sotomayor made that statement, the 7-day average for that particular age group, which is 17 and under, was 766. So that means Sotomayor exaggerated the reality, the factual data, 130-fold. Furthermore, CDC's data from the time they started tracking 17 and under in hospitals for COVID, from that time until Sotomayor made that statement, the total number of 17 and under that have been hospitalized in the United States was just shy of 83,000. And CDC has noted that many of those hospitalizations were the patient, the 17 and under patient, was not there for COVID. They were there for some other procedure, or they had a broken leg, or they was something. And when they were admitted to the hospital for that, they happened to test positive for SARS-CoV-2. I don't know where Sotomayor came up with the claim that many were on ventilators. In the Delta era, CDC said that 6% of 17 and under demographic was on ventilators. And of course, we can imagine with Omicron having much milder symptoms, that number would be significantly reduced. However, just using the old Delta era 6% number and the number of hospitalizations we just talked about a moment ago, that would mean that 46 17 and under were on ventilators. And to be clear, that's 46 out of 74 million, which is the population of the United States that's 17 and under. If we were to consider that 80% reduction in deaths we just talked about a moment ago would also indicate a 70% reduction in the number of 17 and under that are ventilated, if we use that as a working hypothesis, then that would mean 9 were on ventilators. But no matter how you slice it, to characterize that there are many on ventilators is both inaccurate and grossly misleading. Understanding what Sotomayor said, what the data actually is, let's talk about recusal. United States federal court decisional law, as well as federal statutory law, requires a judge to recuse him or herself if there is, it can be actual bias, conflict of interest, or the appearance of bias. In that context, what bias can a reasonable person impute to Sotomayor's remarks? First, we need to take stock of the reality that Sotomayor provided these wildly inaccurate numbers in a public United States Supreme Court hearing and read that into the official record without, apparently, taking the 30 seconds it would have taken to perform an internet search to find out what the actual numbers were. So how is that relevant to recusal? Judges are required, when they consider a case brought before them, to apply the fact situation to the relevant law that's being brought before them being challenged. When Sotomayor states data, numbers, that is 130-fold wrong, I believe it raises the very prudent question of whether she is capable of applying the true fact situation to the relevant law that's being brought before the court. Second, her blatantly false statements telegraph that she is predisposed to vote in favor of Biden's workplace vaccine mandate based on the principle that the ends justify the means. And without getting into whether the ends would even be achieved, the law absolutely does not work that way. Courts do not get to abrogate the law because the judge believes the situation makes it okay to ignore the law or do something other than the law says, to allow something that the law does not, or to restrict something that the law allows. Courts, even the Supreme Court, does not have that authority. In the matter before the court, the United States Supreme Court is being called to determine whether President Biden, any president, but he happens to be sitting in the Oval Office at this time, any president has the authority to order private citizens in the private sector to get vaccinated if they work for a company with 100 or more employees, or be terminated. The question is, does the president have that constitutional or statutory authority? An additional issue before the court is whether OSHA has the authority based on Biden's instructions to do things that Congress has never authorized OSHA to do when it created OSHA or in any subsequent amendments to those laws. It's inarguable that OSHA does not have that authority, leaving aside the question of whether OSHA can follow Biden's directive absent statutory authority. OSHA does not have statutory authority. So what the court is going to be called upon to determine is whether or not OSHA can exceed its statutorily granted authority because the president says so. That's a really steep hill to climb in legal terms. And it appears Sotomayor is already planning, she's laying this foundation with these false statistics to grant OSHA that authority despite what the law says. In short, citing statistics, whether they're small, whether they're medium, whether they're large, citing statistics doesn't change the law. But if we want to get into statistics, I'm curious why Sotomayor did not cite the statistic that as of this past week, according to the CDC's provisional death count, people who have died from COVID, let me rephrase that, people who have died with COVID-19 since the appearance of SARS-CoV-2 in the United States total 24 100ths of 1%. And of course, that percentage down the road, years from now, when researchers tear into all this data, it's very likely that that percentage, that 24 100ths of 1%, is going to drop significantly as they parse patients who died with COVID-19 from patients who died from COVID-19. Point 3, Sotomayor is a 67-year-old type 1 diabetic who has chosen to remain obese. Now,
I'm not going to get into the... Let me get my microphone back over here. Don't want to get into the obese problem there. He has a good point there, but that's not my point here. So I want to point out, excuse me, that I'm using these clips with permission. Okay. I want to point out that I'm using these little clips from Dave Champion's podcast, Dr. Reality, Dave Champion, with permission from Dave Champion. So just in case you were wondering. All right, because I asked him, and he said, sure, go ahead. All right, so just for the record. Now, I'm not going to elaborate on what he said. I think what he said very clearly and very accurately, and expressed himself right on the money. There's no reason for me to go over that and try to put that in my own words or try to elaborate on that in any way, because it seems to me he did a very good job. It's adequate, more than adequate, quite clear. Why should I bother wasting your time by rehashing over that in my words? All right, so just wanted to say that, and so let's see what else we can get into here. Hold on. The first clip was from PBS News. All right, so just so we get that, the sources clarified, and like I said, got permission from Dave to include a clip from his podcast on my podcast. We're cool. And what else we got going here? Like I said, I'm not going to do any commentary on them. I'm just going to post them as they are. I will say this. All right, I'm going to let Dave tell you exactly, the point here about the income tax and so on. So listen up.
The law concerning income tax, when you get into those books, you will experience the establishment narrative utterly and completely shredded with science, in the case of body science, and with law, in the case of income tax shattering the myths. And in reference to income tax shattering the myths, when I say law, what I mean is things like United States Supreme Court decisions, Treasury orders, Treasury decisions, internal documents of the IRS, determinations from the Congressional Research Service, statutes, regulations, all of them cohesively, ever since the adoption of the income tax, all of them, bar none, indicate that Congress has not indicate, proves that Congress has never imposed the income tax on the average American. Gets up in the morning, has a cup of coffee, takes the kids off to school, goes to work, gets a paycheck every couple of weeks. That person, Congress has never, ever imposed the income tax on. But you probably think they did because you've been fed the false establishment narrative since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. And whether it's body science or income tax shattering the myths, nary a week goes by that I don't see comments all across social media from people who have purchased and read these books that they are just floored by what they've learned. And they consider the information astoundingly valuable. So
All right. You got that? Yep, I'm pimping Dave Champion's books. But a worth read, and I recommend them highly. All right? Go for it. All right, that's all I've got for this episode. It's a short one this time, but I just wanted to get those two clips in here, the one from PBS and one from Dave Champion's podcast. And, threw in a little ad for his book, which, by the way, I'm not doing to promote his book and help him make sales, whatever. If you buy a book from Dave, about the income tax, that's fine. But the point is, the books. I haven't read Body Science yet. I will, but in regards to income tax, he's the man. He's the foremost authority on the income tax scam, ripoff, number one largest financial crime this country's ever known. And I just, get the book. Seriously. I'm not making a dime off it. I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it to make any profit off of this. I want the knowledge to be out there. And of course, Dave has to sell the book to make some bucks because, he's got to eat. Right? So, hey, so get the book. Income Tax, Shattering the Myths. And I've got it. I read it. And it just pretty much confirms everything I knew. Plus, give me a lot more information about the income tax and the criminals at the IRS robbing us blind. Well, not me, since I don't owe the income tax, since I'm not a corporation. Really, I'm not. And if you're not a corporation, then you don't owe the tax either. I'm guessing. I'm just guessing. I'm not saying for sure, because I don't know your situation. But if you're not a corporation, I can't imagine how you could consider yourself liable for income tax that applies to corporations. And it does. I'm sorry to tell you. I hate to break your bubble. If you're living in the delusion and you believe everything the IRS tells you, aren't you the same people that complain that the government lies and lies and lies, even when the truth would serve them well? And then you turn around and you tell somebody the truth. Oh, aren't you also maybe the same people that say, taxation is theft? Well, just for the sake of it, I'm going to point out property taxes, local. You can go down to the assessor's office and talk to them and say, hey, you're charging me too much taxes. You evaluate my property too high, and I don't like it. So can we do something about that? You can, present your case locally to the guy. I mean, I know the man in Marion County in West Virginia. I know the assessor. I know him by name. I've known him my whole life. I went to school with him back 60 years ago. And he's been in business, and now he's the assessor. And, I can go down and say, hey, Mark, what's up? I think you're charging a little too much taxes on my property here. I think, it's overvaluated. I don't think the land is worth what you think it is. And you should know that because, because I've got like power lines going across my land. I've got, most of my land is like, I'd say about 25% of my land is actually usable. The rest of it is hillside and woods and power lines and stuff. But it's just, it's not usable. All right. So I can talk to him. So property taxes have been around forever, since forever. I mean, it's not like somebody invented that back in 1776, whenever, we're getting a revolution here and I don't want to pay property tax. Property taxes are a thing, and besides that, you can't fight everything. You got to choose your battles. And one of the battles is, you can't really bring a case against property tax. But you can locally. I mean, you're not going to get the government of the world or the government of the United States to say, hey, property taxes are no longer, because, they can say, yeah, they're legal. And I see that they can provide evidence to that effect, because the government does have the power and authority to levy taxes, like excise taxes. That's a tax on a privilege, not a right. Rights are not taxable. Sorry, break your bubble again, but you have the right to free speech. They can't tax that. It's against the law. Well, their law, the law that controls the government. I think it's called a constitution and so on. All right. So, having said all that, I'm just saying, I don't owe an income tax. I haven't owed an income tax ever, but, there was a time when I actually thought I did. I was young, I was naive and gullible, and I believed shit. And I don't believe shit anymore. If it's shit, I don't believe it. Prove it. Find it out. Do some research. Study the laws. And you don't have time to study all the laws of the United States income tax codes and so forth. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. I doubt it. Maybe you just don't want to. Maybe you just say, I just don't have the time. I got things to do. I got to have fun sometime. Yeah, that's fine. Dave Champion did it for you. So you can go and read the book and he'll tell you. And he's got like 25 pages of references to back it up. And I read it and I said, yeah, there's the proof right there. Court rulings. Bam. Still in effect, by the way. There's still the law. And the judge says, Supreme Court said, hey, no, it doesn't apply to you. It applies to them people. And I can give you a couple of quotes. I got a couple of seconds here. I can say a couple more things about that. Let's see. Who uses the 1040 form? Well, according to the law, non-resident aliens with domestic source income. All right. Now you have to go back to the law again and the regulations and check it out and see what it says about income. Income. Corporate profits. Yeah. Corporate profits. Are you a corporation? Then you can't have corporate profits, can you? So, income. All right? And don't be throwing that 16th Amendment to me. That just confirms that corporations are liable for the tax. That's all it says. It doesn't give the government any new taxation powers because that's in the Constitution. You can't change that. Not even an amendment can change that. Not in the sense that I'm talking about here. All right. So that's it. What else? Non-resident alien. Who would that be? Are you a resident within the United States of America? Are you? I'm gonna guess you are. If if you're listening to this, you might be in the United States. You could be listening to it in Europe or somewhere, but if you're a citizen living in a state of the United States, this is important to you. It affects your life. It affects your money. It affects your ability to provide for yourself and your family. And it gives you some knowledge that says, now let me think. If I don't know it, why am I paying it? Because the IRS agent said so? Ha! They're crooks. What do you expect them to tell you? I called the IRS office one time, an agent. I said, hey, show me the law. And they said, you're a wacko. And hung up on me. Didn't do his job, did he? What was his job? His job was to tell me where the law is. Show me the law. That was his job. It's basically one job, one thing to do. Show people the law that says they're liable. Bam. Wouldn't do it. Called him again. Okay, show me the law. He says, I think that's the 15th Amendment. Really? 15th Amendment? Really? This is an IRS agent. He should know at least what number the amendment is that he's trying to use to rob people, terrorize people, because we know it's not the 15th, don't we? I mean, at least you and I are smart enough to know that. This is an IRS agent. That's the 15th Amendment, not the 16th, the 15th. All right. So what I'm saying here is government can tax corporations. Corporations engage in a privilege. A privilege is something that is established by the government as, like an option. I mean, if it's a privilege, it means you can opt in or opt out. Like being a corporation. You want to be a corporation? Yeah. Then you're going to give up your rights. You're going to be, we're going to tell you what to do. You mean if I want to start a business and I become incorporated, like getting a business license, which is in effect becoming incorporated. That's what a license is. It's not a corporate charter, but it has the same value. If you get a license to conduct a business, a rightful business, not a privilege, a rightful privilege, a rightful activity, and you give it up for a license, permission to engage in a privilege. Why would you do that? And by the way, if you get a license, you give up your right to not be liable for certain things. You give up your right to decide what your business should be and how it should be operated, because the government owns it. They gave you permission. That means they granted you the privilege of engaging in a business. And as we all know, that's not right. So I'm just asking you to think about these things. Do some research on your own and don't go to the freaking IRS website and read their garbage. It's all lies. They're crooks. What do you expect them to do? Tell you the truth? Oh yeah, we're crooks. We're stealing your money. We're terrorizing you and we're, threatening your life. We're going to put you in prison if you don't do what we say and give us your money. Yeah? You think a crook is going to tell you that? Of course not. That's why they're called crooks. All right. That's about it. And I'm not saying take my word for it. All right? I'm not saying this is absolute truth, take my word for it, because I'm the boss of you. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you read the information, if you get the book, Dave Champion's book, for example, and you read it, and then you'll know what I know. And maybe A little more than I know, because maybe I forgot something on page 48 or 110. Maybe. But maybe the book doesn't go all the way and tell you every single thing. The book doesn't talk about, say, the marriage program, which is a fraud. No such thing. I mean, it's not marriage. It's a privilege. You've granted the government to be a partner in your contracted. You have a right to contract, by the way. You've invited the government to be the ruling party in your marriage, which makes you a corporation, and you're no longer exercising the right of marriage. Another one. But anyway, that's not in the book. That's in my book, not in his book. All right, so I'm going to let you go now, and catch you next time. And I appreciate you listening, and pass it on. Pass it on to other people. Tell your friends, neighbors, whatever. Post it, repost it, share it, whatever. You know, just so people can have some information that they can sort of rely on, as opposed to all the bullshit you get on social media these days. I mean, seriously, about 98% of stuff you see on the internet is bullshit. I mean, like the internet, like in social media, like Facebook, Twitter, and Gab, and those places. It's just total freaking bullshit. Why are you rotting your brain with that garbage for? Seriously. Spend some time with something important, something that'll actually benefit you, and something that will enlarge your knowledge of reality. Like Dave Champion's book, Income Tax, Shattering the Myths. And Body Science, after I read it, I'll tell you whether I agree with it or not, or whether I like it or not. And I'm not saying buy it, because I don't know yet. I haven't read it yet. Still waiting for it to come. All right. Catch you next time. This is Steve McClung, Arthur Monologues, where I talk and you don't.